So, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone, depending upon your time zone. Welcome to another episode of Park Launch. Today we're having a fireside chat with Ahmed, founder of Cheetay, and I would say one of the guys who's probably been around as long as the ecosystem of startups has been around in Pakistan. So I think the idea, we've done obviously a couple of these episodes last few weeks. I think today, I think you're quite familiar with the format that we have. So typically, we will first go through a little bit in terms of the background. I think in terms of Ahmed, I think if you agree, we would, first you can give us a bit of background about yourself, your story, your timeline in terms of how you got where you got, and in a way, I guess your dabbles with different startups over the years, what you got out of them, how the journey brought you here where you are. And I think then let's connect a bit with the story about Cheetah and your other ventures in the past. And I think once we sort of get a sense of the kind of sort of challenges you faced, the kind of challenges your ventures have faced, I think we can sort of start going more into a little bit about the challenge you see in the ecosystem of startups in Pakistan today. So it's a bit of a loaded question, but maybe I think we'll give you an initial, let's say, 10, 15 minutes to give us some background, and then we can start going into specific questions. So I think for the audience, I think we'll spend about roughly first 30 minutes, more or less, in talking about general issues, which I think Ahmed wants to talk about and giving his perspective. And then we'll go into specific questions from yourself. So which obviously you can post in the chat box. So maybe without much ado, I'll let sort of Ahmed sort of take the floor and tell us about your journey. What has brought you where it has brought you, and why have you taken this path?
Uh, yeah, these questions are always hard, right? You never know where to begin, and you never know what to put in and what to leave out. I'll just start with sort of a disclaimer, right? I'm a big fan of sort of non-linear journeys. So what I mean by that is, okay, I did an undergrad in computer science, but I never coded. I went to IT infrastructure management. I did a master's in industrial engineering, but I didn't follow that up. I followed that up with a career in strategy consulting at McKinsey. We have a family textile business that I ran for a number of years without sort of any formal training in textiles or in sort of entrepreneurship or anything like that. Um, then coming into the startup world was purely by accident. I wanted to do a PhD in something very exciting, which I thought at the time was very exciting, which was the implementation of public policy, and how do you do the operations in the government and the political system, and how do you sort of get that to efficiently implement policy. I received a very random email from Rocket Internet saying that we want to launch an e-commerce venture in Pakistan. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah. I shop on Amazon all the time. My brother lives in New York. I shop on Amazon. I get it shipped to him. When he's coming, he brings it. I know everything there is to know about e-commerce. Yeah. So that didn't turn out too well. We literally a month later we were on ground, and we decided that Rocket Internet would launch two ventures. One was called Asmalo, the other was called Daraz. So we launched Asmalo as the Amazon model, and Daraz was supposed to be a purely fashion-driven model called, which we called at the time the Zappos model. Okay. So after I think just 2 months, they said, "Okay, yeah, this Amazon model is not going to work. So we are going to shut this down, and we're going to put all our investment in the fashion, sort of the fashion piece, which was Daraz." So I said, "Okay, good." I had a fun 2-3 months. Moved to Karachi, lived the life. Now it's time to go back. But they insisted that no, I should stay on. And then Manish Meyer, who's also a very active member of the group, him and I sort of became co-founders of Daraz, and we launched Daraz together. But very quickly after that, I think again 4-5 months later, Rocket Internet came back and they're like, "Now we want to do the eBay model." So I said, "Look, I'll do it, but I don't want to do it in Karachi. I want to move back to Lahore." So moved back to Lahore to do the eBay model. So essentially, like within 9 months, it was the third e-commerce startup that I was on, and that followed on very quickly with real estate classified. Then we did a car classified. We did a bus one. We did Easy Taxi before anyone had heard of Careem. We launched Easy Taxi in Pakistan. Again, obviously, Careem is just a huge giant now. But even before there was 3G, we tried to use Edge to do apps and get people to shop or transact on digitally on apps before there was
We're really
3G.
talking about like what we're talking about 2015.
No. This is 2012, 13.
12, 13. So you're way ahead of the curve. So in a
Way ahead
sense,
of the
it's
curve,
very
right?
nascent.
There's no
You're not
market.
seen. Yeah, there is virgin market. Nobody's heard of startups in Pakistan. Yeah.
Absolutely. Someone placed, and I still remember the first order of Asmalo. I went to deliver the first order myself, and the person was shocked. He said, "Oh, I thought this was just like a game that we're playing, that you place an order and." But he's like, "Well, now that you're here, I'll buy the router that you've brought." Right. So that worked out. So yeah, nobody trusted online ordering. Nobody knew how it worked. Logistics was non-existent. At that time we had BlueX, who partnered with us, and we had TCS. There was no such thing as COD. The internet was a mess. It was very hard to get high speed internet. It's still a problem. So so those are times when 12, 13 that we started doing this. And then alhamdulillah, Kaymu was the eBay model that we started. That saw a lot of success. So it got so much success that we launched it in Bangladesh, we launched it in Sri Lanka, we launched it in Myanmar, Bhutan, just name the countries like Azerbaijan, or the countries that you've not even heard of, or ever would, Laos, would ever want to go to. Well, actually, you should go to these countries. They're awesome. But yeah, so Kaymu became a big international hit at the time. Rocket Internet raised a bunch of money. I think it was 180 million euros that for Daraz, Kaymu, Easy Taxi, ClickBus, and raised a huge amount of money. But the good thing was that the center was Pakistan for all of this. Then I think as a victim of our own success, things didn't work out as well as planned, and I decided to leave the group. This was 2015. And after that, Kaymu got merged into Daraz. Daraz got sold to Alibaba. A bunch of stuff happened. So, but in 2015 is when there were essentially two problems that I felt are needed if we were going to solve e-commerce in Pakistan. One was logistics, fulfillment. The other was payments. So, got together with a bunch of friends, and decided that look, this is these are the two challenges we need to attack, and they agreed. So, we put together some money, completely friends and family, like no institutional investors whatsoever, and we launched Cheetay. So Cheetay was supposed to be a fulfillment company with e-commerce verticals on top. And then we were going to try and figure out how to build in the payments piece. We weren't very clear on that. Again, Cheetay got reasonably successful because we were an operationally intensive fulfillment model. Food Panda at that time was a pure marketplace. So one day they decided that they want to get into the space as well, and then now they have their own delivery. But we did it first, so we're very proud of leading the market in that. And then as we went along, we raised more money, we raised bigger rounds, we got more people involved, more friends came on board. We were able to convince a few friends to join the Cheetay team. Very talented people, and we grew that. And then
I would say it's early on, right, in the ecosystem. So the big VCs are still not looking at Pakistan at all. You are effectively relying on friends, family, and fools, pretty much, I guess. In terms of raising
more fools.
Yeah. and so how did you convince these people to join you? I mean, to leave, because in a way that's the bit of a challenge, right? So as a startup, you're trying to attract good talent to help you grow, and you're in an ecosystem which is now very nascent at that point, right? The money is not there. You don't see success stories. How did you manage to actually bring these people on board?
That's very interesting, right? So I'd like to say that I did it with a lot of charm and floating, throwing, showing dollars to people, saying that look, if anything is going to work in Pakistan, we are the people who are going to make it work. And why are we the people who are going to make it work? Because we're all foreign educated, and we all have e-commerce experience, and we have this tech experience, and we're all extremely smart people, and we're extremely patriotic people, right? So we have we really divided the roles really well. We had our co-founders in the US who were out there going crazy trying to raise money for us. Then we had, people like me and Usman here on the ground in Pakistan who were, doing the operations and building the team and doing that. So I think ultimately we were really good at what we did, and we had a very compelling story and a very honest story, right? Even now, we were all, in our mid to late 30s. So, plenty of experience. It's not like, we were straight out of college. Not that I'm saying that they can't do it, but, we weren't 25, 26 years old, starry eyed, with lots of ambition and we'd actually done it, right? So we were very credible. And again, we had access to capital, which, few people had at that time because there was no VC money. So, because we had, our co-founders in the US, all from the finance industry, they were able to, raise more money than anyone could, right? Until VC started looking at Pakistan. So, it was a mixture of luck. It was a mixture of hard work. It was a mixture of credibility built over a 20-year career of multiple people. So it was, all those factors combined. So just to continue that story, so we did a bunch of that. Then we decided that there are many more verticals that we want to explore. So we made Swift, which is, an e-parcel or, sort of in the mold of a DHL or a UPS, but, very digitally enabled, right? So Swift is growing like crazy. It's a B2B sort of venture. We've made our own cloud kitchen, which Cheetay fulfills for. We've made this new venture called Cheetay Pop, which is an online game. With I think the first prize is like 1 crore rupees if you play and win. Again, all of these things are linked, very intricately into growing the market and building credibility and spending marketing dollars in a smarter way than just giving pure discounts. So that's where we are at now, and I think 2019 is when Majid decided he was a founding partner at a $4 billion hedge fund in New York. He decided to leave and come and take over Cheetay, which for us was a huge success. That someone of that caliber with a MBA from Stanford, with starting 2 hedge funds, which went on to be $1 billion hedge funds, see so much opportunity in something like Cheetay and comes on board. He was very instrumental in raising all the money that we've raised so far. So now he manages it and runs it and obviously does it really, really well.
So I think you've been through I would say the trenches in a sense, right? So you've been there at the start of the ecosystem. You've sort of seen it evolve, and I'm assuming there are a lot of bunch of and we keep on having a lot of new founders coming on our chat rooms, right? And we want to see inspiration, and everybody's sort of selling the Kool-Aid in terms of investors to about the ecosystem, the size of the demographics, the size of the market, and its youthfulness and buying power and penetration of high speed internet and so on and so forth. But I guess it's not that rosy being in the thick of things and doing what you've done. So if you would say point out, let's say, your top 3 challenges, if sort of starting from a young venture and sort of scaling it up over the last few years, like what were those challenges and
So the first challenge we faced was this sort of trust on something digital which people can't see. Nobody was willing to prepay. The second sort of big challenge was around ecosystem. There was no ecosystem. We could not integrate any payments. I'm not even joking, right? And then if you know any of the initial Daraz people, they will tell you that there was no credit card acquirer in Pakistan. We got the ADN system in Germany, and our payments used to clear in Germany with no way of coming back into Pakistan, right? So all these sort of MCB and HPL online acquiring came much later. The sort of third challenge was around talent. I know we love saying that Pakistan is full of talent. We have raw natural talent. Just look at Shahid Afridi. Look at Mohammad Asif, who phenomenal, just raw talent. Unfortunately, the big problem there is that Pakistan has a huge brain drain problem. If you look at all your class fellows from school, from university, the top people tend to move abroad, right? Because they have a lot more opportunity. And getting people to and the people who stay, they want to work at the P&Gs, the Unilevers, the McKinseys of the world, right? Or Pepsi, Coke, or Telenor, or Jazz, or Citibank, or ABN AMRO, which was big back then, right? So we have a huge talent fight on our hands, where we need a lot more capable people who can help startups do this. So yeah, these were sort of the big sort of 3-4 challenges that we faced as far as the market is concerned. There was no ecosystem, there was no talent. And sorry, the last thing, which you touched upon is whether there was even a market, right? Because yes, we sell this whole story about 50% of our population being under the age of 25, 80% of our population having smartphones, or 60% of our population having smartphones, right? That's some number, a very high number. And we one of the highest middle classes in the world, and sort of the fifth most populous country in the world, right? And that's a challenge that we face, right? Kiki, we look at all these all these numbers, and they're all true. It's not like they're not true. And then we have this fight of trying to convince people to come onto the platform, transact, and then transact again, because unless you build a cohort, the first order is always heavily discounted, and you don't make any money until people repeat 3-4 times, and you can look at their lifetime value versus their acquisition cost. So that those are sort of the big challenges we're up against, right? We're up against an economy that's not growing. We're up against well, the government is very supportive, but has always been supportive. But the will is there. I guess the skill needs some upgrading. We're fighting poor infrastructure, and we're fighting a lot of people living below the poverty line who just can't afford standard services, right? So yeah, it's a tough ask. But having said that, it's the sort of it's the next big frontier market, and no matter how you look at it, it's literally the next big thing, right? India has taken, Indonesia has taken. Now this is it, the big opportunity. If people miss out now, then they're going to, then they're going to have to wait for the next big emerging market.
I think you touched upon a very interesting topic, I think, in which maybe you are facing already, because you've become a certain size, and your constraints are certainly different from, let's say, a young startup, which is 1 year or 2 years into its venture. So talent, and I think we keep on talking about a lot of talent being available in the country, and what you mentioned upon is that a lot of the top talent actually leaves the country very often. And so for a large player, relatively large player in the space, for you to be able to retain or attract top talent to the level that you want, it's probably a bit of a challenge. But how do you try to address that on your side? Because obviously, if you talk to a lot of the people from our parents' generation, उनके लिए होता है, यार बेटा ऐसा करो कि मल्टीनेशनल में जॉब कर लो जाके, if you're in Pakistan, या फिर चलो go अमेरिका चले जाओ, वहाँ पे जाके जॉब कर लो. So how do you convince them? How do you convince, in a way, the ecosystem around them to leave all that and actually go and join a Cheetay and work there?
So you're right? Our parents were from the generation where they valued job stability over money. Sort of our generation and the generation above us valued money over job security, in the sense the security that a government job gives you, that whether you perform or you don't perform, you'll always be promoted, you'll always have a job, right? So but multinationals are, if you perform, you do well. If you don't, you have to figure out other stuff too. Luckily for us, the millennials and the Gen Zs of the world, they value sort of freedom and independence a lot more than they value money or stability, right? So what they want is to create, new things. They want to, innovate. They want to personalize things. So that's worked really well for us, right? Again, I still remember the first time we went to LUMS to recruit. We had a stall. Nobody even wanted to come to us. They're like, "Ye kya hai? Why should we, miss out on all the other opportunities?" But now, we're at the stage where all the key startups, the 5-6 big ones that have raised money, can now offer competitive salaries. But there are two things that we can offer that no one else can, right? One is equity, right? So you actually take a bet on yourself as well as a startup, and you say you come in and you build something, and if it grows big and you're a part of it, you get the benefit as well. So that's one thing. The other thing that we can offer is a very fast growth, or another way to look at it is greater responsibility at a much younger age. So if you look at startups, again, I don't want to name any, but the head of strategy will be someone who's 26 or 28 years old, right? Whereas to become head of strategy at Pepsi, you'd have to be 55, right? So these are the things we can offer. That at a very young age, we give you greater responsibility and a bigger role, and it's that title as well, right? And I've had the most amazing conversations with my team on what kind of titles they want, right? And honestly, it reached the point where I would go, someone would come, can I have this title? And I would like, what, you can call yourself God for all I care, right? Take the title. This is your task list. This is your job description. Just make sure that, these KPIs get met, and I will call you God. Don't worry about it, right? So yeah, so again, it's creating that fun thing. It's creating innovation.
So I think coming to some of the questions coming from the audience here. So yeah, so fine. I mean, obviously, one at the end of the day, the question is, are you making money, right? And I think that's a pivotal question which in business school they will ask you. But I think a question that's coming here is that fine. I mean, raising capital is great as a startup, but how do you measure your success? Like, what is success for you as Ahmed? Which is it about only profitability? Is it about your exit? Is it generating value overall in some other way? I mean, what is success for you?
Yeah, it's easy to talk about it, after 8-9 years of doing this. If you'd asked me 8 years ago, it was probably all about, money and fame, and, the chance to be on this awesome platform, to talk to people, and act like an expert. But now I have two sort of big, how should I put it, visions in my head, right? One is reversing the brain drain, right? I wanted to create, an environment here in Pakistan where people would want to move back, right? Or not leave at all, right? All that talent that we talked about in the beginning. So if there's enough excitement here, if there's enough professionalism here, if there's enough opportunity here, then one, people would come back, and two, they would never leave. Or you can flip those. One, they would never leave, and two, if they leave, they would want to come back, right? So that's one of my sort of big ambitions, so to speak. The other is building an ecosystem. It's not just about one Cheetay becoming a unicorn, or one Zameen.com becoming a unicorn, right? There have to be literally hundreds of companies that are worth $500 million, $1 billion, and that is what is going to move the needle for us. And for that, we need to have synergies. We need to have a government regulation in place. We need to have a talent pool that is available. We need to have infrastructure, and most of all, we need to have customers who are willing to consume. If I say कि $500 million की 10 company होनी चाहिए, then we need consumers that can consume $5 billion, right? That's not easy. So those are my two sort of things, right? One is building an ecosystem, and two is reversing the brain drain, so we can take advantage of smart people and get them to stay.
You touched upon regulation in a way, I think, to allow for that ecosystem to develop. So speaking of regulation, is it net negative? Is it net positive today in Pakistan, or is it irrelevant for your ecosystem?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest here, right? Regulation has never been a blocker. It's been an irritant, but it's never been a blocker. And the reason I say that is because you have lots of outs. It is, and it has now started becoming conducive. There are 3, 4 departments that that you have to worry about, right? One is SCCP, which is the company registration. They are by far leading the race, right? So they recognize e-commerce, they recognize tech companies, they and they are doing regulatory sandboxes. They're by far the most progressive of the organizations. Okay. The second is State Bank, right? State Bank is not as progressive and as active, but obviously they can't be, right? Because they are the custodians of the money and they have a lot more sort of responsibility on them. But they are definitely helping. They are changing things. They are introducing new laws. They've built a micropayment gateway, which is gonna really facilitate digital transactions. They're sort of supporting in other regulation as well. There's still there's still a lot of unanswered questions there, like holding capital in Pakistan, because they're so dollar hungry right now that if so if we raise $50 million and we would have a holding company, an offshore holding company with a bank account outside Pakistan and hold that money there, and send it every month depending on our cash burn, right? Reason being because the minute it lands in Pakistan, they would convert it into rupees, and then we would lose the dollar, or usually escalation is what happens. Very rarely does it fall. So and then the other problem that we face is repatriation, and it's a similar whether it's the reason is similar because the government just doesn't want dollars to leave, so they make it very difficult for you to repatriate. So apart from that, they're out there, they're working with us, they're helping, and always listening and willing to do their little bit. So and just going back to SCCP, they've just introduced the ESOP, so now you can give your employee share options in as far as the SCCP is concerned. So lots of progress there. The third sort of organization is the tax authorities. They are, how should I put it? A nightmare, I guess, is a polite way of putting it. They have no clue how to deal with us. They have no clue how to regulate it. They have no clue how to collect it. And of course, it's a nuisance value, right? So again, we've had advanced conversations around that, but they're sort of the last stepping stone in solving these problems. So when I think these are the sort of 2-3 things. And overall, as far as the overall regulation goes, there should be tax benefits and there should be subsidies. I'm not really a believer in that. I'm more of a believer that if the government just gives us infrastructure and lets us be, and then just tells us, okay, this is what the tax system is, we'd be a lot better than if we go and say, give us tax breaks. Free markets are generally more efficient. Again, you could argue, and I don't want to cause controversy here between socialists and capitalists. But yeah, you could argue that yes, in the beginning you need a little bit of handholding, you need a little bit of protection, but ultimately, given the status of where we are, it's just better that that we figure it out ourselves, and as long as we have the base in place.
Okay, so I guess in a way now the government just needs to get out of the way in a way, right? So it's as long as things are simple, you know what you're dealing with. I guess that's optimum for you pretty much.
There are things the government can really help in, right? Everyone is really buzzing about this whole thing that now Pakistani sellers can sell on Amazon, right? That's sort of the last couple of weeks have been very exciting, in WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups, that and there's a lot of activity there, and that was completely facilitated by the government. So it was the Ministry of Commerce who got together with Pakistanis working at Amazon, and they figured this out, and obviously they keep the private sector involved. Again, the Ministry of Commerce is a very progressive ministry, right? They're very, very helpful. They're listening. Sometimes, I feel they're a little too open, right? We don't even call anymore. We just walk into the ministry and say, Hanji, where is Minister Saab, where is the secretary? And, we want to have a conversation, right? And so yeah, but they do have a role to play for sure. And they admit that, they can't do it without the private sector. So, and we're very happy to get involved.
That's right. So I think often, like when you speak to young founders and young startups, I mean, I think the biggest thing seems to be on the mind is how to I raise capital, and often it seems to be. I mean, I would say the focus appears to be a bit too much on how do I raise capital rather than the product itself. But question is, like, if you're a startup today, a young startup, and you have, let's say, an interesting model, um, how do you, with not a lot of initial funding available, how do you see them bootstrapping? I mean, what's the best way to sort of actually enter the market, test your product, without actually having to spend too much out of pocket on building scale initially?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things around that, right? One thing I've, what we really, what helped us through was friends and family. So, the minute we got stuck, we'd go to running to all our friends and say, okay, look, all of you, 100 of you need to place an order today so that, we can test out our system. So, so the first stop is always friends and family, right? Okay, whoever you can get involved in your system, whoever you can get support from. There's a bunch of incubators now that are, reasonably seasoned and have a very clear idea on, how to support and how to, sort of help these startups get up to speed. You have a few accelerators. Obviously, if I were to mention one, then would have to be Eye to Eye, right? Kulsum, little, well, it's not little initiative. So those are the sort of, and you have the NIC, you have Plan 9. Now every university has an incubator and accelerator. So you have to rely on friends and family. You have to rely on sort of your university support or these incubators and accelerators. And now what's happening is that there's a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, but there's angel capital becoming available. So people are constantly asking, okay, look, I have $100,000 to invest. Where can I put it? But I don't want to put it in one of these established startups. I want to pick something where I can actually add value. So people, family offices, people, high net worth individuals have started getting involved a little and started looking at this space, right? If for no other reason than just for how should I say, just for fun and to play with. So a lot of that is happening, and then on top of that, you have now VCs showing up in Pakistan. So you have the Fatma, Gobi Ventures. You've got the Khurram Zafar's 47 Ventures. You've got the I2I Ventures. You've got Laxon Ventures. So there's a bunch of that. And now the other thing that's happening is that a lot of international accelerators, there's 100 startups, 100 Durians, Y Combinator, Alchemy. They've all started, becoming available to people from locally who can, there are a lot of there's a bunch of them in Dubai. So luckily, in the last 2 years, there are a lot of eyes on Pakistan. So you can very, very quickly, find mentors, find help and guidance, and figure your way around. But like I said, initially the support has to come from, your near and dear ones, whoever your mentors are, whoever is willing to help, right? And I think everyone should take some responsibility and get involved and help these people out.
I guess in a lot of these other markets that we see, the big ones, Indonesia, you look at India, you look at Brazil. I mean, what has often triggered a lot of, I would say, additional development of the ecosystem is some, decent, successful exits. And although we've been talking for quite a bit of time around the ecosystem of startups in Pakistan, I think it's been almost a decade now. We haven't seen very large or many exits so far, and often you see the same names pretty much being there year after year, growing, but not really exiting. I think apart from maybe, I mean, Kareem being sort of Pakistani exit, but then you see also like apart from, let's say, acquisition of Daraz, or you look at the easy pesa in a way, if you want to think about it in that way. They're not. You don't really see like a lot of these other exits. I mean, you don't see a bunch of millionaires walking around in Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi today. And so it's a question: is it that something has been missing, which is now here, or is it something still missing, which is not allowing us to sort of graduate beyond a startup and actually having an exit?
I honestly believe it's just a function of time. We just started later than everyone else. By the time we started, India already had, billion-dollar startups. Indonesia already had billion-dollar startups. So, one thing that's always been interesting for me is if you look at sort of, VCs and their mandates, VCs with geographical mandates. So you have the South Asian, so a China or a Hong Kong or a Singapore VC will be covering, or Japan would be covering South Asia, Southeast Asia. So the Indonesias, the Philippines, the Malaysias, the Thailands of the world will be covered by VCs with Southeast Asian focus. Then you have India is big enough, right? So then you have VCs that have an India focus. And they're in India and promoting India and investing in India. So Sequoia has an office there, et cetera, right? Tiger has an office there. So so you have that. Then you have Middle East, right? So you have Saudi, Dubai, Qatar, Oman, Egypt, and all of that. Well, sort of our challenge, I feel, has been that we are not big enough in ourselves, but we also don't attach very well to a region. So, if there was, if I was to make a fund and say, okay, I'm going to focus on Pakistan and the and ke baad, there's no answer, right? Because there's no other country that you can loop in. You can't say Pakistan and India because for reasons that are well documented, we can't be in the same region as India. We can't say Pakistan and UAE because two completely different markets. We're a 220 million people market with a $1,400 per capita income. They are a 10 million people market with a much higher per capita income. Completely there's no way to sort of link the two, right? So I think that's one of the challenges that we faced. But I think now we isn't faced historically, but now things are better, right? Because a lot of funds just look at emerging markets in one umbrella. So they look at Pakistan, they look at Brazil, they look at Nigeria, as sort of one bucket, and we've already started seeing the benefits of that. I just think we were late to the party, as usually we are. But now, if you just look at the last year or 2 years, the amount of funding that has been raised has been multiples of of everything that has happened before. So we're getting there. I think it's just a question of time, and it's just a question of scale. And in another couple of years, we'll hopefully be there.
So, in your view, I mean, if you compare, let's say, evolution of the startup ecosystem in Pakistan, and you think about the other large markets which are sort of comparable in the neighborhood, I would say maybe let's say Indonesia, Indonesia, India, Egypt, Turkey, reasonably large markets which are maybe slightly more advanced than us in some ways. I mean, do you feel like we are sort of following a similar sort of trend line, or are there some issues which are very specific to Pakistan in areas such as e-commerce, logistics, fintech? I mean, I'm just throwing out different areas which people are sort of focusing on, healthcare. I mean, there's a lot of now sort of capital going in these areas, but are there some is there Pakistani exceptionalism in some ways in some of these issues? Or are we run of the mill sort of in EM country, which is just sort of did not get enough capital for the longest time?
I think there are two parts to that, right? It's a bit of both, but I think particularly we are a unique country, right? One, people sort of underestimate how big a country we are, like end to end, taking it from the topmost of KP or Kashmir right down to the tip of Sindh. So one, we're a huge country, right? And the other thing is we're a very diverse country. So Punjab has the Punjab Revenue Authority, and Sindh has the Sindh Revenue Authority, and KP has the KP Regulatory Authority, right? Getting them to talk to each other and sort of homogenize a system is very, very difficult. And then the people are completely different, right? You have sort of the Punjabi mentality, which is sort of, okay, again, not to stereotype, but there's a certain way of doing business in Punjab, and there's a certain way of doing business in Sindh, and KP and Balochistan have for the most part been ignored by everyone and everything. So when you look at it, your largest market is always going to be Karachi, your second largest market is always going to be Lahore, your third largest market is always going to be Pindi, Islamabad, right? So So there are certain unique characteristics in terms of size, in terms of the education level of people, sort of the entitlement of people. But but a lot of it, I'm sure other countries have as well. So it'll get, like I said, it'll get there, right? Everyone will get there eventually. We just started later, and that's a fact, right? It's not like we were slower. We just started later to to get to it, and yeah, and I'm telling you, in a couple of years, we're seeing it already, and we'll start seeing it very, very quickly. What we need is a lot more money. You know, again, having the largest fundraise round, being less than $20 million is it's exciting. But when you look at India, they raised $400 million and $500 million, and Kareem raising $400 million in Dubai or the Middle East. So yeah, we need the 100 million raise, we need the $400 million raise, and we'll do that. The other thing that that is going to start happening is consolidation, right? So you see 2-3 big players, and they're going to merge together, and they're going to build scale through some, which is your area, right? Mergers and acquisitions. So and when and I'm not even talking about synergies, right? I'm just talking about pure scale. $200 million companies get together, and you all of a sudden have $200 million to play with. And scale solves a lot of problems. Scale solves, sort of your basic unit economics problems and the overhead problems. And plus, what you can all of a sudden invest a lot more in technology. You can invest a lot more in people. So that's what we're looking at, right? We just need to sort of accelerate what every other market has been through, and we'll typically go through the same journey, albeit a little differently, because our people are a little unique, and they need to be treated just slightly differently. But I think the journey will be pretty much the same.
I think you touched upon a very interesting topic, which is, I think, scale. And I think one of the trends you often see, and you rightly pointed out, unit economics is the critical part here. And often you in young startups, people tend to forget about the unit economics part of it, right? It's at the end of the day, your contribution margin has to be at a certain level for it to be sustainable, even if it means that long term, I mean, you may not entirely break even at the net income level initially, but your unit economics need to make sense for you to keep on growing. And in large markets, especially where buying power is limited, that becomes even more critical, because you have very extremely thin margins, and scale becomes even more important, because you're never going to make money with with thin margins and a small customer base. So
yeah, I hear you there, right? And that's my big pet peeve, right, around these discount economies. You start something and you immediately think, okay, I'm going to sell $100 for $80. I'll the $20 are going to come from the money I've raised, which I'm going to burn through, and I'm going to hope that this customer that I've spent $20 on is going to come back and buy for a full $100 4 times. So my lifetime value will be $500, and I would have spent $20, and I have a lifetime value divided by an acquisition cost of whatever 50, right? But unfortunately, that's not what's happening in the market, right? What's happening is that people are discounting, and they're discounting to an extent which takes them negative unit economics, right? Negative contribution margin, in the hope that it's going to come back. But the minute you stop discounting, customers start disappearing. Mm-hmm. So, and we've seen that as well. So now, again, as part of the evolution of this, and sort of the learning, and being sort of the first, being involved in it from the beginning, we're part of causing this problem. But then, we also, should be the first ones to start solving it, right? So we've built a market which is hugely dependent on discounts, because app pay, there's no cost to switch, right? So, Kareem and Uber are almost interchangeable. Okay, now they're one company, but they're almost interchangeable. One will give you slightly better service sometimes, one will give you slightly better service. Similarly, you have, every time you're competing, you end up discounting more. But what happens is, okay, one company decides that, okay, we're not going to discount anymore. The other company is still discounting, everyone switches there. So then, after a while, they realize, oh, we don't need to discount anymore because the first company isn't discounting. They stop discounting. A new, emergent comes up and says, we'll start discounting because we've just raised a bunch of money. And so we've spoiled the market to the extent where the consumer base is very dependent on and looking forward to discounts, which are just not going away yet. So it just goes against every grain of business book that I've read, where you say that, oh, sell something below its cost to build your business forever, right? Okay, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months is fine, but we've been doing it for years and years now. So now we need to get smarter about where we spend our marketing dollars, right? Scale will obviously help. All the scale we've built up through discounting. What we've done is we've trained the population to transact online. So now, when I go to universities, this happened recently. I was there, and these 4 kids were sitting together deciding what to have for lunch, and they had 4 different apps open, and they were like, okay, which is offering me the best discount, and we'll order accordingly. So in a way, I was like, yeah, discounts, muft ho rahe and whatnot. On the other hand, I was like, wait, but all of these people are now trained to transact online, and they have apps, and they have their data packages, and they're just sitting there, at least browsing 4 different apps to decide. So I think the positive is definitely there, that the number of this generation, as it gets into the job market, there's going to be a huge amount of users who just cannot function without ordering online, right? Whether it's discounted or not. So that's sort of the key positive. But the problem is, if we run out of money before then we're going to be in big trouble, right? Because we need to survive and raise a lot more money till then.
So I think that you raise an important point. I mean, in a way, I guess the question is, how do you have stickiness in your model for customers to stick around even when the discounts start going away, right? And in some industries, maybe you have those network effects, and maybe you can have the stickiness because of the network effects. And in other industries, maybe there's zero switching cost. Right?
So let me tell you how we think about this, right? The way we think about this is in terms of your share of wallet and your discretionary spend. There's some things which are absolute necessary, like your school fees you have to pay, your utility bills you have to pay. Then there's a portion of discretionary spend. Okay? Stickiness, I think comes from if you can capture the discretionary spend. Okay? So like I said, if you look at banking apps, every banking app allows you to pay your gas bill, right? So that's not, so there's no unique differentiator, there's no value prop there. The value prop will come from when you look at a person's share of wallet, and you see, okay, what is the highest discretionary spend in that share of wallet? It could be milk. So if you capture their milk consumption on your app, then they'll be like, what, I order milk from this guy, I'm going to order bread as well. What, I order milk and bread from this guy, I'm just going to order KFC from this guy as well, right? So it's an interesting way of looking at it. And from the books that we've read and we've looked at, it seems to be the way to drive stickiness is start capturing people's discretionary spend, and that's what the hook is.
But if you look at the Chinese models, I mean, a lot of them, and I think they're a bit more advanced compared to a lot of the Western models in that sense. I mean, they've gone to the super app way, and that's their way of locking in the ecosystem, right? And I see that, at least for example, in Dubai, Kareem is trying to sort of go down that route and become a super app. But is that a model which makes sense, or do you think would make sense for the Pakistani market in a way to capture the larger ecosystem in a way? Because if, let's say, you're a pure logistics player, or a pure food player, or a pure e-commerce player, or a pure healthcare player, or a pure fintech player, is that sufficient for a large, fragmented, low margin market like Pakistan to make money? Or do you necessarily need to lock people in a larger ecosystem of super app?
Yeah, to be honest, I've avoided this discussion for a very long time, and I still continue to avoid it because I simply am not sure whether sort of the American model of having a distinct app for everything you want to do versus the Chinese model of doing everything through WeChat, or doing everything to Taobao or that model. So India, they're trying it as well, right? Even though they still have Amazon. So Amazon does your bill payments as well, right? So yes, then they have I keep forgetting their payment platform, the big one that they have, uh, which I didn't forget. I'm still on the fence on this one, right? Ultimately, the telcos or the banks are very well positioned to do a super app play, or e-commerce is the third one, right? So either an e-commerce company is gonna lead the super app play, or a bank is gonna lead it, or a telco is gonna lead it, right? Those are our three options. So I guess the way to answer that is, okay, if it does happen, let's hope it's the e-commerce company that does it, and not the bank or the telco. Because I think because all the sort of rails are now in place, right? We have the micropayment gateway, so we don't really need the telco and the bank to be making payments anymore, right? People will get these digital banking licenses, and all of a sudden, the ecosystem is going to change. So we, as an e-commerce, we just need to integrate them, or even get one of these licenses, and all of a sudden, we'll solve that problem. Obviously, we can't get a telco license, and a bank can't get a telco license, so that's the big one. But other than that, sort of the payments part we can do, the logistics fulfillment part we can do, the purchasing part we can do. So yeah, maybe that does happen, and we've positioned ourselves in a way that if it does, so we will be in prime position to do it, as will a few other players. I'm not saying we're the only ones. Bikea would be in a great position to do it as well. Maybe Airlift would be in a decent position to do it. But Easy Pesa, Jazz Cash somehow right now are sort of highest in the ranking of doing it. But yeah, it's if it happens, we've got all the bells and whistles and all the rails in place to be there.
Good. I think we're sort of going towards the end of our discussion. I think we have an interesting question. Like, in sense, you have different constraints in this market that you have. Obviously, there's financing, there is quality labor, right? There's a number of these sort of constraints that you have around your ecosystem, and if you have to choose, one, and if you can address one of them today, and which you feel is going to have the most bang for the buck in terms of growing your business, as well as, let's say, the larger ecosystem of startups in Pakistan, what would that be? I mean, what's the single biggest hurdle for you today?
The single biggest, again, I was going to avoid saying capital, but capital is what's going to make the big difference, right? So the more capital we can raise, the bigger we can grow our team. The bigger logistics we can build. We can build our warehousing, and most importantly, we can build technology, and we can build like first grade technology, right? We can, we're already building automation algorithms where we batch our deliveries in a way which is optimized for time and for cost, right? So the capital is and with more capital, we're going to be able to attract more talent. We can build our own infrastructure, then we don't need to rely on other people to build infrastructure. So if we can raise more capital, not just for us, but for the entire ecosystem, a lot of these problems will start solving itself. And we'll give more jobs to people, which will obviously help the economy to grow, which will make more consumers. So it's a beautiful sort of snowball effect of the way the velocity of money flows through the economy.
What's the big dream now for us? So basically, where do you see yourself? Where you see your venture? So ideally, 5 years from now, where do you want to be?
So it's interesting, right? I was somebody just forwarded an interview of mine which I gave way back in 2015, which was sort of the first time I spoke about Cheetay to well, that was the media. So it's 6 years on from there, right? And back then I said, okay, we want to be Pakistan's first unicorn, right? And the dream is still there, and we're closer to that dream now than obviously we were 6 years ago. So I think the big dream is still to be that first unicorn, and to build that ecosystem that that will entice and encourage people to stay, and if they do leave, then to one day come back, to be a place where they can actually see their ideas grow and flourish.
What is growth for you? What is a good year growth wise? What is a bad year growth wise?
Yeah, so again, early stage, right? Anything less than 4x, 7x is just we get pounded by everyone saying, yeah, this is rubbish. So ideally, we'd like to see 10x, 7x. We won't, how should I put it? Make any, sort of make any changes. Anything below that, then people need to start giving explanations and justifying it, because you just can't raise capital on growth below that.
No, I think you guys have done a fantastic job. Look, I mean, I know that, for example, मेरे घर के अंदर खलीफा खताइयाँ अब जो है ना चीते के ऊपर आती हैं. So it's I think the market is evolving in that direction, right? So it's and that's something which we all see happening, and at least in the large urban centers, and उससे आहिस्ता आहिस्ता निकल के tier 2 cities में जाएगा, tier 2 cities से निकल के आगे बढ़ेगा. And at the end of the day, there is a large middle class which is there, and you may and then bigger purchasing in larger volumes in a larger sort of subset of population. So
yeah,
I guess
sorry, just to sort of finish that thought, right? So and like I said, now we have Swift as well, right, which is sort of the mid mile and the last mile e-parcel company. So we have a lot of logistics assets now and a lot of logistics technology. So anywhere where we see opportunity, we're going to build, we're going to use our technology, and we're going to use all the, the people that we have and the infrastructure that we're building to sort of, fill all these gaps. So, you're talking about Khalifa ki khatai coming to your house. Now because we have Swift, we can actually take that Khalifa ki khatai and ship it to Karachi and deliver it in Karachi, right? Or Islamabad or Peshawar. So again, just building on that, there's a long way to go, and we're slowly building towards it.
Great having you, Ahmed. I think it was a fantastic talk. I think, and we had some very engaged audience as well. So it's good to have you. Any lasting sort of thoughts? Anything you would sort of give as advice to new founders looking at you eagerly and trying to follow in your path?
Yeah. Look, so first of all, I'd like to thank Ali and the Park Launch team for having me here and giving me this opportunity, and of course Salman, you for a very engaging sort of conversation. I just want to sort of conclude with we're very excited about the market. It has its challenges, and we're very honest about it, but it's a super exciting market to be in. And I see people wanting to now do startups. And what I would really advise young sort of startup founders to do is, find your mentors, people you can hug and cry, with people you can, get ideas from, because you can't solve everything by first principle thinking, right? It's just too hard. There are people out there who've done it. There are people out there who know how it's done. Fine, you should do first principle thinking and try to solve your own problem, but do try to find experts, right, who can actually help you and make it worth their while to help you, right? We have this huge culture of, I'm just going to go to someone, mame ke chache ke phuppe ka taya hai, so he will help me. But you can't, it's just that's the nature of our market. But you need to find ways to engage people and give them something that they'd want to stay engaged. And a great way is, and I've told people, you should have a board of advisors. Give your board of advisors equity. And, and that way, they're sort of they're not your employees, but, you sort of own a little bit of their time because you've paid them. So, think of smart ways of doing that.
Aligning people's interest with your interest, and I guess get good people on board, and don't go the route of all these small businesses. आप जब देखते हैं हॉल रोड के ऊपर बीडन रोड पे लिखा होता है कि हमारी कोई और ब्रांच नहीं है, और वो बेसिकली 50 साल से होते हैं वहीं पे, and because they never grown beyond their immediate family, right? So but we need to get out of that mindset to grow and scale up, I guess, and that applies both to you guys, as well as the large corporate ecosystem in Pakistan in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ahmed. Pleasure to have you. And I think more power to you and more power to the Pakistani ecosystem.
No, thank you very much. This is very encouraging and engaging. Thanks.
Thank you.